England in Salford, and we're holding All for England's first activity. So today's activity, we're on a bridge over Moorside, and we've got two big banners, we've got plenty of English flags, and the reactions, as you can hear from people, are so good. People are so happy that there's a group standing up for the English people, and that is what All for England is. We are here to reshape the thinking of a nation. We are here to say to a nation, all of you English men and women, you are not alone anymore. We are here to fight your corner, and we'll fight it proudly because we are English and we deserve to survive. So today's been a great success so far. We've got another little trick that we're going to pull out the bag shortly. The wind's actually in our favour, not in my hair's favour, but in our favour because the flags are flying proudly. So yeah, there's going to be another little trick up our sleeve. I'm so happy with how it's gone today. And if you're an English nationalist and you want help in your area, building up, creating a protest, standing an election, anything you want help with as an English nationalist, reach out to All for England and we are your guys. Hi everyone, welcome to All for England's The Voice of England podcast. We're very happy to be here again, aren't we, Alex? I believe this is our fourth live stream now.
Fourth for you, third for me. You were with Marty on Thursday.
Yes, on Thursday I did do a stream with Marty Blagborough, the YouTube superstar, and we had a great discussion. If anyone wants to watch that, go over to Marty's YouTube channel. It's on there. It was last Thursday, and it was brilliant discussion about fellow YouTubers, the YouTube world, the Patriot scene, just an array of subjects, and a bit of inappropriateness because we like that on one of our podcasts. But yeah, I'm so happy to be live tonight. I'm not going to lie, I am melting. Absolutely melting. So is poor Alex. He's melting. He's all over his floor right now because it's so hot. Like, it's way too hot. But we're here and we're live, so we're happy. And we're happy to be engaging with you guys again, because why we're doing these All for England podcasts is because we want you guys to get to know us, get to know the patriots behind the movements, know our personalities, know our real opinions. And this is what we aim to do on The Voice of England. We aim to give you our real opinion. Even if that's not what you want to hear, we will give it. We want honesty and transparency to be key. We don't want to hide anything. If we're feeling a certain way, we'll say it. You know, if we're proud of something, we'll say it. all you'll get from us is honesty, because that's the only way we're going to change the situation in this country, is by being upfront, honest about politics, honest about the situations, and honest about how we tackle these issues head on. Don't you agree, Alex?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's what we wanted to set out to do with not only this podcast, but the entire movement that we've started up here, All for England. We definitely need honesty. It's very rare nowadays, I find. And we just need someone to tell the truth about everything, like political issues ideologically, but also about where the movement is lacking, regardless of who it may upset or if it's not what people want to hear. People need to know where we're falling behind if we're going to change those things and improve and actually win, which is what we all want.
Oh, absolutely. Do you know, we will give some uncomfortable truths, because both me and Alex have been around a long time in the Patriot scene. So we've seen what works and what doesn't work. And that's why we created All for England, because we want to fill those gaps where we see a gap in patriotism, nationalism, where we see things not going the way it should be going. That's why we're here. We're here to bridge the gap and make those changes. So if you're interested in All for England, if you're interested in true, real, raw nationalism, then go over to our website, allforengland.org, and get involved, because we intend to change nationalism in this country. We intend to make it the popular option once again. We intend to make people look at nationalism as they look at their own children. It's survival, it's love, it's heritage, it's everything. And it's the way the English people survive. So this evening, we've got an interesting stream. We're going to be discussing a few different issues that have happened over the past few days, the past week. And you'll get our opinions on it. You might not want to hear them, but you're going to get them anyway, because me and Alex love talking politics, don't we, Alex?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think the day goes by when we're not talking about politics, either on stream or off stream.
Even on our Christmas breaks from work and stuff, we was constantly on the phone. This is why we've created this, you know, because for me and Alex, politics is our life. Nationalism is our life. We don't know how to do anything different. Like, this is our sole purpose. Me and Alex have spoken about this many a times. We believe this is what we're intended to do. Like, we believe this is our fight, and this is why we do it, you know. Yes, it would be easier to maybe go work in Tesco and have a normal 9 to 5 job and stuff like that, but we wouldn't be fulfilling our purpose. That is nationalism.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So should we get to the first subject tonight, Alex?
Sure thing. Well, the first thing we wanted to touch on briefly is 10 years since the Brexit vote. I mean, can you believe it? I was only 16 at the time. I unfortunately couldn't have partook in the greatest punch in the face to the establishment that this country's ever given to its elite. Fortunately, I was too young. They didn't give votes to 16-year-olds back then, probably for the best, actually. But that's where you started off in politics, wasn't it, Ashley? Like the Brexit campaign.
Absolutely. Do you know, this is where I kind of cut my teeth in politics, was Brexit. Because so I come from a family that's always been interested in politics. My mum was interested in politics. She always reminded us that we've got the ability to vote, so use it, don't waste that. So it was always kind of political. And I remember going home on lunch breaks, because I lived right next to the school, and catching up on like PM questions and stuff like that. So it was always quite political. So when Brexit came around, I wasn't 16. That would have been nice to be 16 at that age, but I'm older than you, Alex. I know it's hard to tell because they use Clinique, but I am older than Alex, so even though we look alike. But yeah, so when Brexit came around, the Brexit vote, I was actually working, I believe I was in the barber shop at the time, because that's my trade, I'm a barber. So I was working in the barber shop at the time, and barbershops, you speak politics the whole time. That's what you do. It's a political atmosphere. And we were speaking, like me and the clients, all the time about this Brexit vote and how they was planning on not delivering it, or they were saying they needed a second vote. And they was referring to the 17.4 million people that voted for Brexit as dim little Englanders that don't know what they're voting for, and say, well, they only voted because of immigration, because they're racists. They don't know about the consequences of leaving and all of this nonsense. And it was a constant theme. Like, when I used to get up and get dressed in the morning, I'd feed my son before work, and then I would put the news on religiously. So when I was getting dressed for work, getting my son ready for school, I'd put the news on, and it was a constant bashing of Brexiteers, constant, and especially that kind of, do you know, that know-it-all, middle class, upper class snobbery of the working class. Oh, well, everyone that voted for Brexit must be working class and stupid. And I was furious listening to that, absolutely furious. And everyone I was speaking to, do you know, some of them weren't working class, some were middle class, upper class, but they voted for Brexit. We're all furious. And I thought, who are these people, these politicians, do you know, and these media personalities to look down on us like that and speak about us like that, as if our vote doesn't like matter because our class system. So we don't matter because to you, we're down here and you're up here, do you know, because of income. So no, do you know, I was angry about it. And I remember at the time, so I didn't know there was a Patriot scene. I wasn't big on social media. I didn't really use social media apart from maybe posting the odd picture of my son at the park. I didn't really use it. So I didn't know there was a Patriot scene, but I was angry. And at the time, in France, there was yellow vest protests and stuff like that. So I posted on Facebook at the time, not knowing anyone. I was like, I'm doing a protest outside Media City, the BBC headquarters in Salford. I'm doing a protest there because I'm angry. Do you know, our voices matter. Our vote means something. So I'm creating this protest. And I turned up. I think there was 7 of us. So it was a very well-attended protest, 7 of us. It was pissing it down, but we were there and we were loud and I loved every bit of it. I was like, yeah, I'm proper sticking it to them. And back then I didn't care about what I said. I didn't watch my words at all. So we gave it to them, all 7 of us. And then I was like, yeah, that was brilliant, that. So then I went home and I thought, yeah, I'm into this kind of thing, even though there's 7 protesters. And I went online again and I said, right, I'm doing a protest in Manchester City Centre, St. Peter's Square. I'm doing a protest. So perfect location. You know, it's where the Battle of Peterloo happened. And you know what? Let's have another peasants' revolt. Let the working class scream about the way we're being spoken to. Let the working class stand up for themselves and say, no, we are intelligent, we are capable, and we know exactly what we voted for. I turn up in St. Peter's Square expecting 7 people again. 80 people turned up. 80 people. And back then, protests weren't as popular as they are now. You didn't get all these different protests. Do you know, there was only really the Tommy protest, the Britain First protest. There was no small organised protests. You either had huge protests or no protests. That's how it was back then. So 80 people turned up and I was like, wow. I had to give a speech to 80 people, my first ever speech in St. Peter's Square. And I had to speak to these people. And that's what cemented politics for me. I did it. I was scared. I was petrified. But I knew in that moment that because I've got a big mouth, as everyone will be aware that watches me, because I've got a big mouth and I am political and I am capable and I'm confident, I knew that I had to use my voice in that moment to stand up for not only Brexit, what we voted for, but to stand up for my fellow working class patriots that voted for that. Because I thought I've got the ability, you know, I've got the know-how. Obviously, I didn't know anything about the patriot scene, but I'm political enough to stand up for us and say, no, we matter. Our vote matters. And just because you don't like the result of the vote, it doesn't mean you can come in and say, well, we need a second referendum. Absolutely not. The people voted decisively for remigration. And obviously, as a Brexiteer, what annoys me is we've never really got Brexit. So a lot of people will say, well, Brexit didn't really work out for you, did it? No, because we've never been delivered it. That's why. Brexit on paper, what it's meant to be, if that was delivered, then yeah, it would be a much different scenario here and we'd have a great system, but we just don't have it. But 1 second, I'm just going to veer off this. So I've just seen a very interesting comment.
I was waiting for you to say something, actually. I was waiting.
I've seen it. So there's a guy here called At Order of the Natives. He said, women should, here we go. women should not be in politics. Okay, let's address this. Well, why aren't you in politics? Why aren't you the Order of the Natives, the anonymous YouTube account? Why are you not in politics? I would happily be a homemaker in the kitchen, making a sandwich, loving life, sitting on the sofa, watching Real Housewives, eating my bonbons. I would love that. That sounds ideal to me. But the problem is, men like you are not in politics. That's why women like me are, because you're not standing up and doing your job. So if men 40 years ago, when they saw things changing in this country, would have stood up decisively and changed it, then people like me wouldn't have to. People like me wouldn't have to. It was your job 40 years ago. The reason I'm here now is because men 40 years ago didn't do the job. And I'm a big supporter of men. Alex will tell you, all of my friends are lads, all of them, and they're strong lads and they're decent lads. But the problem is, I'm here because not enough other people are standing up. I'd happily be at home. I'd happily, be eating bonbons and blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, that would be ideal, but you're not doing your job. You're literally barking orders and saying women shouldn't be in politics on YouTube on an anonymous account. How about you stand up and do what I do? You go into the areas that I go into. You confront the Islamists like I do. You confront the savage Africans like I do. You get an ounce of bravery that I have, and then, I might be okay with your comment, but you do not have the balls that I have. Let's be honest. So, yeah, there we go. There's my take on that. But back to Brexit, I feel like sometimes you've got to put people in the place, because as much as you might be a nice guy and you're a nationalist and you support nationalism and blah, 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 don't criticize the people that are putting the head above the parapet, and taking great risks for this country. Because my family has been harassed. My son has been harassed. My son has been quizzed by the Home Office and the police in his school. So yes, my son and my family have suffered because I decided to stand up for my country. So then don't take a pop at me when I'm doing more than what you do. So I just felt like clarifying that, because yeah, ideally women would like to be at home and women would like to be homemakers. But in this current climate, we can't be. And this is why we're here. I want English children to survive and thrive in England. I want English children to be the majority forever in these lands. So I will do anything it takes to ensure that happens, because I'm a nationalist and I love my country, and I would die tomorrow if I knew my country would survive. That's how much I love my country. So back to Brexit. Now I've cleared that subject. Back to Brexit. Now I've cleared that subject up. Yeah, we didn't get it delivered, which is unfortunate. That's how I cut my teeth in politics. We didn't get it. I doubt we'll ever get it. And now there's talks about rejoining and another vote to rejoin, which is absolutely atrocious, giving people voted to leave. So I'm disappointed in that. But when they didn't want us to vote a certain way, they wasn't going to deliver Brexit how it should have been. And Farage has a lot to answer for there, because Farage obviously helped us get that Brexit vote. He was instrumental in us getting that Brexit vote. But then as soon as people voted to leave, he skipped town. It wasn't delivered yet, and you skipped town before we actually got Brexit. So don't call yourself the king of Brexit when you skip town before we actually got the finished product. That infuriates me. What's your take, Alex? Because I'm going on.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I think a lot of people, I think, choose to deliberately forget that Farage did that, you know. But he did. That's why UKIP sort of collapsed in a sense at the time. Not that they were really ever a nationalist party. They're more like a populist conservative party. But he left that to collapse. And that really was the force that was driving the Brexit vote, was the fear of the rise of UKIP at the time. So yeah, that's why I don't really have much faith in him to this day. He's played many disappearing acts before. But back to Brexit in of itself. Yeah, it was 10 years ago, and we've never really got the Brexit that the people voted for. I mean, there were many different groups of people campaigning for their own versions of Brexit. You even had, surprisingly, you had communists campaigning, some of them campaigning for Brexit. Obviously, their Brexit would look different to our Brexit, and our Brexit looked massively different to the so-called fake Brexit we got. What we got was a City of London globalist Financial Times style Brexit that the Tories implemented. And it is so sinister because these people always have a plan B. When that vote was a punch to the establishment face, they pulled out plan B and they said, oh, this Brexit vote is clearly a message from the people that you don't want to be stifled and chained to Europe. We want global Britain. That was what they said. Their campaign was global Britain. You want more trade deals with the third world in exchange for the more visas for immigration for third worlders than ever before. Yay, global Britain. That is what they gave us. That isn't what Brexit was about. Brexit was about the exact opposite. It was a nationalist vote. It was a vote primarily for national sovereignty, to bring back industry to this country, and against immigration. That's the three main reasons people voted Brexit, if you ask them. And none of that was delivered. We got worse immigration than ever. And that's not the fault of Brexit. That's the fault of a corrupt Tory government that implemented a globalist version of what the people were rejecting. The people rejected globalism. That's why they voted for Brexit. But I will say to people, don't lose hope, because when a nationalist party, if and when something like even Reform, I don't consider them nationalists, but if they get in, or Restore, form the government, Brexit plays a key role. It allows them to do the things that they want to do. Obviously, hopefully, they'll leave the European Court of Human Rights. You couldn't do that if you were still a member of the EU. So politics is a long game. And although it happened in 2016 and we haven't seen the results of it because we've only had traitors in charge, the time now is to get people who aren't traitors in charge, to ideally get nationalists in charge, who will then use Brexit, the groundwork that's there, it's not being utilised, and hopefully they'll use it the right way. So that's my hope for the future. I hope that Brexit will see the fruits of Brexit one day.
Yeah, hopefully. Do you know, so many people voted for that. So many people felt a certain way for that, do you know, and were so hopeful, and they've not had that promise delivered. So, and people deserve that. So let's hope so when there's nationalists in charge, we finally get what we voted for. And I came into politics for a reason then, do you know, came into campaign for that, and then it never happened. But saving the homeland will happen, let me tell you. So let's go to the next story, Alex.
Next story. Well, everyone's heard of this. Everyone's been partying about it. Starmer resigns as UK Prime Minister. It's about bloody time. Oh my word! We were all taking bets on, like, when's the final nail in the coffin? What's it going to be? And I guess this by-election in Makerfield the other week was the final nail in the very, very nail-filled coffin. Let's put it that way.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So I'm sure everyone's super happy about Keir Starmer resigning. I just think, though, he's a selfish bastard, because he could have done it on a Friday rather than a Monday morning. Because can you imagine the business pubs would have got if he did it on a Friday? The celebrations across the country, the business for pubs and, you know, anyone selling alcohol would have been brilliant. So he couldn't even resign properly. What a selfish little prick he is. He is, honestly, like, you could have done it on a Friday. But obviously everyone's super happy about it. Everyone hates Keir Starmer, rightfully so. But yeah, like, I'm obviously happy, but there's a caveat here. Let's be honest, Andy Burnham will be so much worse. So much worse. If you think Keir Starmer's bad, wait until you've had Andy Burnham for 6 months, because Andy Burnham is what people don't realize, because he puts on this persona of a likable character and stuff like that. He's far more left wing than Starmer could ever be. Far more left wing. Do you know, he's a communist, well, a socialist. He is so left wing, do you know, and so radical. So I do think times are going to get far worse before they get better. Far worse. Because the thing is, as bad as Keir Starmer was, he was definitely much more of a liberal, do you know, when it came to politics. He was far more of a liberal in comparison to Andy Burnham. But I think obviously people voted to get rid of Keir Starmer. So at least they've got that. That's a positive. But you are going to get far worse. Obviously, as someone from Manchester, well, someone from Salford, I'm glad to be rid of him. Like, very glad to be rid of it. I'm sure the homeless people of Manchester will be glad to be rid of him, because many years ago, so when I first started helping the homeless in Manchester City Centre, this was probably 10 years ago, with various charities giving out meals and stuff. A lot of the times, the homeless people, you couldn't see them or you couldn't find them, or there was far less of them on the streets. Obviously, you still see them, but there was far less of them. And the reason was because Andy Burnham ordered the police to give them like ASBOs to ban them in town. And anyone from Greater Manchester will realise you saw far more homeless people popping up in small towns, do you know, and like at traffic lights in small towns and stuff like that, or outside McDonald's. And the reason for that was because they was all getting banned from town. So instead of dealing with the problem, you just offset it. You put it in a different, you know, small town rather than having it in the city centre. Whereas the problem with that is all the services for the homeless are in the city centre. Do you know, all of these different homeless charities and stuff like that? So the support they could access was in the city centre, but because they've been given ASBOs to leave the city centre, they couldn't access those services anymore, do you know, and that's why people saw them popping up all over like the small towns around Manchester, do you know, which is outrageous. And he had the police like confiscating these homeless people's like sleeping bags and different things like that. But how are they meant to stay warm? Because I remember when I was working with all of these different charities in Manchester, there was so many stories that were honestly heartbreaking. I remember once this team that I used to go out with, they went to give the homeless people like hot chocolates in the morning and coffees and stuff like this. And there was one story, I think it was like a 46-year-old woman. They went to give her a coffee in the morning and she was gone. She was gone. She wasn't alive, you know, because of the code. And obviously, I don't know if she had her stuff taken from her. I don't know that. But the fact that people rely on these things, these sleeping bags, all this different equipment to survive the harsh winters of the north, and then you're taking away, you're ordering the police to take it away, or you're giving them ASBOs so your city doesn't look bad. So you give homeless people ASBOs to get them out of the city, but you don't deal with the foreigners plaguing Piccadilly Gardens, do you? You don't deal with the African criminals that are literally stabbing people and dealing drugs on Piccadilly Gardens, but you'll give ASBOs to homeless people. That is the type of man Andy Burnham is, do you know, and that's the type of man that's going to be our Prime Minister. So I think people should literally expect far worse now, because it is going to get so bad, so bad.
Wow, that's an interesting take, because I just assumed that this would just be like another puppet with a different name as Prime Minister. I didn't think that is anything going to change. It's just one Labour idiot for another. But after hearing that, it doesn't bode well for people. So essentially, Manchester's got rid of him, and sooner or later he's going to be in 10 Downing Street in London. He's going to be my problem, not yours.
Exactly. Like, he is going
to cause country's problem.
He's going to cause so much damage. He really is. And people just have to brace themselves. But maybe the positive of this is that it radicalizes the nation quicker. You know, because Labour are so bad and because Andy Burnham's going to be so bad, that people realise at that point we need change and we need it fast. So that's the only positive spin I can put on that situation.
No, it's true. People aren't political by default, and that's not a criticism. That's totally normal. We're political by default, but we're just abnormal, I suppose.
Definitely.
Yeah, but certainly when people only become political, I think, out of a need, out of survival. And I think to save England, people need to become political at this point, now more than ever. So if anything comes out of this, is that people, for their own survival, are going to have to become political. And that can turn the country around. So maybe a few years of bad will end up leading to a path for many decades of good, hopefully.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's like if you get a wound, you know, it always gets worse before it gets better. And I do think that's what's coming. So the only positive spin is people are going to get more political, you know, because they're forced to get more political. So, let's go to the next story, because I can't stand Andy Burnham and I don't want to stay on him.
Well, we've got more Andy Burnham coming up, actually.
Oh, great.
So. You think you were rid of him? You're not rid of him yet.
No. Oh, God.
Well, it's the context more about why he's
Yeah.
in the position he's in. Obviously, everyone was glued to their screens. Everyone political, that is, was glued to their screens regarding the Makerfield by-election. Now, this is the result. It's got the vote tally and the percentage here. I think people thought Reform were going to do a lot better in this. Labour were going to do a lot worse. But it looks like Reform couldn't cut it really this time. Restore pretty much stayed where they were in the polls. They were getting about 7-8% in the polls. They achieved 6.8%, so
Yeah.
not too far off. Labour very massively overachieved, and Reform quite massively underachieved. So,
Yeah.
what's your thoughts on that, Ashley?
So obviously, my thoughts are people why Labour did so well isn't because people love Labour, because they don't. It's not even the idea that because Andy's so popular up north, it's more that people were voting to get rid of Keir Starmer. I think people obviously knew that Andy Burnham wanted to become Prime Minister, so they used their vote to get rid of Keir Starmer because Wigan itself, where Makerfield is a very patriotic area. It's very patriotic. It was very Brexit, but they were voting with the sole purpose of getting done that. They've achieved that. But by consequence, I think I lost Alex for a second.
Oh, there we go. I lost
Oh,
you as
you're
well.
back. Yeah. But by consequence, now we don't have a patriotic MP in Makefield, and now we're going to get Andy Burnham. So, but my take on the other vote, I think had Andy Burnham not wanted to be Prime Minister, I think Reform would have taken Makefield, absolutely. But people were voting for, the change in Prime Minister. Restore, I can't say I expected Restore to do better than it did, if I'm honest. Is Alex here with me? Because he's oh yeah, you froze for a second, Alex.
Yeah, we're having a few connection problems.
Oh, I think you're back. Are you back? Well, I'll carry on talking anyway. So, Restore, I thought would do much better. I mean, sorry, are you there, Alex? I can't work out whether Alex is in the room with us. Alex, are you in the room? Don't think anyone wants us to talk about Restore. Right, I'll crack on. Are you back?
Oh, are you? Yeah, I'm here.
Right, okay, you're here. Okay, so what I was saying was Reform would have done better had people not have been voting for the change in Prime Minister. I think Reform would have took it then. But Restore's vote, I kind of expected them to get that. They are a brand new party. They've only been around for so long, so I didn't expect much else from that. So I think Restore did well considering they are a new party. They've only been around for 4 to 6 months, I believe, or registered for 4 months. So I didn't think too much of that. And to be fair, I'll be really frank here. At least to beat the Conservatives, the Greens, and the Lib Dems, that is an achievement. But I will be honest about the candidate system here. So I think Reform had the best candidate. I believe, is it Rob Kenyon? I believe they had the best candidate. I am going to be honest. I don't think that the Restore candidate was really up to par. And I'll be honest about that. I don't. She might be a lovely woman, an absolute lovely woman. She might do great for the community, but I don't think she had the personality for a by-election. And elections, especially by-elections, especially ones that, have a lot of spotlight on them, it needs personality. And I just don't believe Rebecca Shepherd had that. Not one bit. The Reform candidate, it's funny because I'm not a fan of Reform, yet they had a great candidate, but I am a fan of Restore, but I wasn't a fan of their candidate. It was funny how it worked out that, because I was like, oh my, what do you do? Because I actually really like the Reform candidate. But I just don't think that Restore had the right candidate for that election. Although I don't think it would have changed the vote that much because they are a new party. But I think they need to look at that and think and look at the feedback and think maybe, we need to think twice in future about just getting any old candidate, to like fill the gaps. I think they need people with a lot more personality than they had there. because politics is showbiz, and the fact Rebecca wasn't giving interviews, but then when she did, they were like subpar. It just wasn't. I don't think it was the right candidate.
No, yeah.
Again, she might be a lovely lady, but not the right candidate for the job.
No, absolutely. Like you said, she's probably a great woman, great local woman, but with a by-election, there has to be that presence. You have to have presence. You have to be able to walk into the room and everyone knows who that is. And I feel like with her, like I saw lots of videos of the Reform guy. What was his name? Sorry.
Is it Rob? Not Rob. Is it Rob Kenyon?
You say he has more presence, but we don't even remember his name. There you go. So
no, that's really bad.
you don't even want to remember is Andy Burnham.
It's a week in politics, it's gone.
Yeah, it's
paper now.
But the Restore candidate definitely probably a great activist, could be a great activist, but not a great choice for candidate in a by-election. She just didn't have the presence for me, and I'm sure a lot of other people as well. And I noticed that with the social media, you see a lot of that. Social media is key these days, and I didn't see a lot of her at all. I didn't see her giving speeches or talking. There were only very few. The Reform candidate was a good speaker. Obviously, he had his faults with his weird Twitter messages, but I
thought those were funny, though. To be fair,
well, it's like you either love them or hate them, I guess.
Yeah,
but I think we agree on that front. Restore definitely needed a candidate with more of a presence.
I think obviously. I don't think there was ever going to get more than 7%, though, in a first-time by-election. I remember Reform didn't do that well in their first by-election.
Oh, yeah, they were getting like 2% when they were started.
Yeah, exactly. So 7% is good going. As you know, I went out with in Makefield campaigning, and I obviously phoned you straight afterwards, like we do, to talk about politics. And the only criticism I had was because they had a huge ground game, so many people. But the only criticism I had was that it wasn't unorganized, but it wasn't trained, so to speak. So when I went out with a team of canvassers, the canvassing lead who was directing the canvassers on what to say and what to do was no more than 22. He must have been about 22 years old. He was 22 years old. He wasn't a northerner. He wasn't really giving great instructions on how to canvass. As you know, and Alex, we've canvassed a lot. So we've knocked a lot of doors. We've done a lot of political canvassing. So we're very experienced when it comes to canvassing. And I found that the leads of these canvassing teams, they kind of didn't know what they was doing. So how could then they instruct their teams to canvass? And I think obviously being a new party, they've not had time to finesse all of those situations. But when it comes to high profile elections, your game needs to be spot on, absolutely spot on, because you've only got one time, the first time to make first impression. That's your only opportunity. That first knock on the door, people decide in that moment whether they're going to vote for you. So you need to make it count. And obviously the instructions that I got, I didn't listen to those instructions. I went off and canvassed how I know to canvass. And I think that was quite successful. But I do think they need maybe to have teams to sit down with and train and, put a lot more work in behind the scenes before they put so many people onto the streets, because numbers are great. But if the numbers don't know what they're doing, then you've got a problem there, because you're knocking on people's doors. You're not knocking on politicians' doors. You're not knocking on Twitter people's doors. You're knocking on ordinary people that aren't on the internet, and they don't care what's on the internet. They care what's going on in Makefield. They care what you're going to do about the community. They do not care about your ideological reasons for this, that, and the other. They don't care. They want to know that you're going to fix the potholes. So you need to make your canvassing game about that area, and how it's going to help that person whose door you're knocking on. Make it personal, make it about them. And these were the things I said to you, Alex, that I do think they need help on. And I also said to you, As a northerner, me knocking on a door in Wigan's perfect. I know Wiganers, I love Wiganers, know how to speak to Wiganers. I'm like, you're right, vote for this person because everyone else is crap. Like, I obviously didn't say that, but I know how to deal with fellow northerners. I know how to speak to them. Whereas there was a lot of canvassers from down south, a lot, and a lot of Twitter canvassers, and people that are in politics for, the ideological purity of it, which is all well and good on the internet, but Sharon, whose door you're knocking on, does not care. Like, she doesn't care. And she also doesn't want a southerner knocking on a door telling her how she should think and how she should vote. Because northerners are, by nature, a bit standoffish to southerners. We don't want southerners knocking on our doors telling us what to do. So if you are going to knock on our door as a southerner, then you need a certain approach. You cannot just come to my door and act like you're the know-it-all of politics, because you're going to get told to piss off.
Well, no, absolutely. I think it's the same that goes for anywhere in the country, really. If you're knocking on doors and you're not from there, you're from 100 miles away, a lot of people are going to ask, well, what are you here for? You don't care about the local area. You're just here for your own political reasons, and I understand that to an extent. Obviously, we're ideological, but it doesn't mean I can't understand how, the normal voting public are going to think. Because if I had someone knocking on my door who obviously came from 100 miles away, I'd say, well, why are you here for? And I think that maybe was another issue with Restore. I did think about it myself. I thought, you've got a great ground game, like I said, in terms of numbers. But when you're getting all those numbers from across the entire country, I'm just thinking, what do local people think of that? Do they appreciate that when they get someone from, like, I don't know, let's say London or Surrey or Cornwall coming up to Makerfield to campaign in this election? Maybe it shows how passionate the party is about what they believe in. But I think a lot of people might think, oh, you're just using us as a political project,
Well, exactly. I think that is how people feel. It's like you're using us to further your agenda rather than to improve our areas. And I do think that is generally the take when a bunch of people from all over the country are bussed into an area. It's like, do you actually care about this area? Where's your northern team? Do you know where's your Wiganers? Because people are, like we are by nature, we're nationalists. We love our own people. Do you know that's who we are? We love our own people. People are like that in different areas. If you're Mancunian, you love fellow Mancunians, you relate to them more. That's just nature. So having a bunch of people from, I don't know, Surrey or Sussex or all these different places knocking on your door telling you how to vote, it doesn't always go down well because they know nothing about Makefield, absolutely nothing. So why would they care about Makefield? That's how people perceive it. And I understand that, because if I had someone knocking on my door from, I don't know, Nottingham telling me a certain way to vote, I'd be like, why are you telling me a way to vote? You're not from here. You don't even know what's going on in the street next door. You don't know. You don't have a clue what's going on in my area. So I think despite the fact they've got great numbers, I think they need numbers that have more connection to the local area. And I think with the canvassing teams, they need to train the teams to have that knowledge of the local area, because every election is different. Every approach has to be different. It doesn't matter, it doesn't matter that, global politics or national politics. You need to know about the area that you're campaigning for. That is paramount. Because I speak to so many people and say, why are you voting? And they're like, well, I'm voting because of potholes, or I'm voting because of this. Well, Sharon from down south doesn't know about the potholes on that street in Makefield, does she? She doesn't have a clue. So let's start getting our canvassing teams, whoever they're standing for, knowledgeable about the local area. I think that will have such an effect, a positive effect. But again, they are a new party. They're only, 4 months old. But I do think they should take note of the constructive criticism they've received from Makefield and put it into action. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. I think, like we said, in a nutshell, great policies and a great start for a 4-month-old party. Like, people were comparing them, saying they didn't beat the former British National Party result in the area. The British National Party had been around for, I think, over 20 years at this point. They had obviously a reputation. They had well, a reputation gained from being a nationalist party. That people knew their policies, people knew their leader, people knew their logo. Restore's only been around 4 months, so give them some credit. Getting 7% of the vote in your first by-election is astounding, and great policies. But the constructive criticism: your candidate selection needs someone with a lot more presence, someone who can appear in videos and be inspirational. No offense to the candidate they had, like we said, probably a lovely person. And the canvassing game, definitely, I think, stick to local people. I know you'll have less people, but it's better. Local, but less is better than from the 100%. Whole country, but 1,000, because that it's not the number that matters. It's the locals that matter in these types of elections. And definitely one more point. Sorry, one more point. Speaking to people on the street and then canvassing is different to a Twitter conversation. You can have debates and you can talk ideology on Twitter. Doesn't mean you can address the concerns of normal people. So definitely the canvassing needs help with. And I think that's something that we can help with as well. We're going to be running All for England training sessions. We're not a political party, but we can offer, we will be offering webinar lessons for our members. If you want to join as a member, we will offer you our experience in this field, because we've had years of experience of canvassing, and we know how to do it.
In all different areas, different types of elections, whether it's been local elections, parliamentary elections, mayor elections, by-elections, whatever it is, all different types of elections in all different areas we've canvassed for. So we've got a lot of canvassing experience. So like Alex said, go to allforengland.org, join as a member and take part in our webinars that we're doing every month. You will learn canvassing, public speaking, activism, direct action, you name it, we are teaching it. Because why gatekeep the information that we've learned over so much time? We want everyone to become successful in nationalism in their own right, because only when we all know what we're doing and we're all working together will we win. So that is why All for England exists, because these are the things we've learned over time and we want to share with you. So even if you're not canvassing for yourself, if you go to a place like Makerfield, you've already experienced, you've already got that those lessons on how to deal with different areas, different people, different elections, and then you'll be far more successful when you do knock on that door, and you won't get it slammed in your face because you know what you're doing. And that is so important, because like Alex said, it's all right debating on Twitter, it's all right speaking politics on Twitter, putting a paragraph about your ideological reason for this, that and the rest. It's very different knocking on someone's door when they're not expecting you and they're not political and they just want you to help their local area. It's very different. So if you do want to take part in our webinars, go on to allforengland.org.
Excellent. Our last topic for the evening tonight sort of continues from this. I mean, everyone in nationalism has seen this, so it's got to be discussed. The elephant in the room. Is the Rupert Lowe interview, the recent interview that Rupert Lowe did, especially this very short clip. But it's a very short clip, but it's caused a lot of debate online. So I'm just going to play it quickly.
Test far right, sort of ethno-nationalist or neo-Nazism. I've never been driven by that.
Well, on the surface, it doesn't look too controversial, but I think the main point is he says, he's bad-mouthing the ethno-nationalism thing, lumping it in with neo-Nazism. I think that people need to approach this calmly and sensibly, I think, and actually analyze what's going on here. It might be a total cope on my part. Let me know in the comments if you think I'm just coping. But Rupert Lowe is of a certain generation where ethno-nationalism as a term has only ever been used by our opponents as a smear and an insult, like racist.
Yeah.
And I think in his mind, it's still that way, I think, in his mind. And he feels like he has to say this sort of thing. If you actually look at his policies, though, all his policies are ethno-nationalist things. He says they're ethno-nationalist. All the people he's employed to be spokespeople of the party, they all say ethno-nationalist things. But I feel like he thinks he needs to say this because it's still a smear, it's still an insult. He's not aware of the term is being reclaimed by real nationalists to differentiate themselves from people who think, oh, belonging to a country is just a set of values. If you drink tea and eat fish and chips and drink beer and watch the football, you're just as English as anyone else. We have to differentiate ourselves from this. And that's why the term ethno-nationalism, we use it to describe ourselves, is becoming prominent. But it's not popular among the public yet, I think. And this is the problem. A political party, their job essentially is to address public issues. It's not to push ahead of the public. Otherwise, you become an idealist organization. You don't win any votes. That's just the reality of the political system. I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying that's what we want, because I'm an idealist, but I'm also practical. You have to understand that political parties exist to address issues that are already in the public consciousness. If you go too far ahead of that, you lose votes. You become a niche fringe organized political party. Same as Reform, they held back. You can't go ahead of the public and you can't fall behind the public because they'll ditch you. A political party's job is to be addressing what the public is saying at the time.
Yeah,
that's where we come in, though. All for England and other groups we're happy to work with, but it's certainly All for England's mission. We want to go out there and reach hearts and minds. We're not looking for votes.
absolutely.
We want to pave the way so that these politicians like Rupert Lowe, leaders of political parties, will feel comfortable embracing these terms because the public will have embraced them. Most of the public that we meet in like white working class areas, especially the estates, the pubs, the high streets, they don't call themselves ethno-nationalist. If you approach them, they probably would think, oh, well, what does that mean? But if you ask them about their beliefs, it's entirely ethno-nationalist. We just have to tell them this is what ethno-nationalism is. You already are an ethno-nationalist. You just don't know what to call yourself politically. Because like we said before, these people by default are not political. We want to make them political for their own survival. We want them to shout it like from the rooftops, we are ethno-nationalists. And that is where we're going to come in. And then political parties like Restore, you'll see them embracing this. It's like remigration. Who said remigration 3 years ago?
Yeah.
It was only until nationalists promoted the term relentlessly, and now it's in the public consciousness. It's mainstream, and we're going to make ethno-nationalism mainstream. Watch this space.
Absolutely. That's why the past few speeches I gave, public speeches, I started there with, I am a proud ethno-nationalist. I want to make that clear. Obviously, I'm a nationalist, Usually, I wouldn't think there's any reason to say ethno beforehand, because a nationalist is wanting your people to survive, loving your people. That is what an ethno-nationalist is. But like you said, now because of this faux nationalism where anyone can be, anyone can be British, anyone can be this, as long as they love the country and fly the flag, we have to make the distinction. So we are proud ethno-nationalists, and that is what All for England will do. We will make the public embrace the term, use the term ethno-nationalism as a prideful thing. They'll love it. They'll say it proudly. They'll scream it from the rooftops, like you said, and they will not be shy about it. And then political parties will adopt that term. Then political parties will be forced into accepting that as a political position of the masses. But we, as the activists, we as the organisations that aren't political parties, we're the ones that have to push that. Because like you said, political parties are there to operate on what's already in the public domain as a popular option. They're not there to, push the window further, because like you said, they become niche, and then no one's interested in them. So that's where we come in. We are here to radicalize a nation into thinking our way and fighting our way. So then in 3 years' time, when there is a general election, people will vote decisively for their own people, for the survival of their own people. This is why we said we'll never become a political party. What's the point? There's enough political parties. We need to change the thinking of an entire nation, and that's what we intend to do. But regarding the video of Rupert Lowe, to be fair, I don't think he's an ethno-nationalist. I don't. I think he's just an Englishman. He's just a nice Englishman. He doesn't like immigration. He thinks it's gone too far. This is the majority of people in the country. They think it's gone too far. They don't look at people a certain way, but, they want their own people to survive, but maybe not to the extent that we're nationalists. But I do think Restore as a whole, if they ever were elected into Parliament as the majority, I do think they'd reverse the tide enough for nationalists to then be able, to have some influence, for real ethno-nationalists to then be able to have some influence. But I do think he is just of that generation. He's of that generation. Nationalism, ethno-nationalism is, Nazism. It's the National Front types. He's from that generation. I don't know how old he was, but I'm guessing he was born, shortly after the war. I don't want to guess how old he is, but I am guessing.
Are you calling him a boomer, Ashley? Are you calling him a boomer?
I try not to use that word. But he is of a certain age, where they do look at like the word nationalism and ethno-nationalism a certain way, despite the fact that his policies, were created for people like us. But the benefit of him, despite what he says, is he's got a very young team around him that are very nationalist, and they will be having a lot of influence. So you can overlook what he says when you think, well, this is his team. These are the people he's got working for him. If he doesn't implement what he's saying, if he doesn't hold true to what his policies are, then he's got no team. He's got no team then. So I think take comfort in the knowledge that the team he chooses, and that's a good point, chooses to have around him are all young nationalists, and they are all idealists. So I just think it's a terminology issue there. I don't think it's a big issue. I'm not easily offended, though. I'm not easily emotional about things. I think politics is too emotional. I think people are too reactionary. I think wait to see how things play out rather than throwing your toys out the pram anytime you see something you dislike. And you are never going to agree with a politician or a party 100%, but you pick the best vehicle.
Exactly.
So you pick the best option. You're never, ever going to get 100% what you want. So if Rupert Lowe is willing to deport millions, but he's not willing to deport every last one of them, then fine, he'll deport millions. We're closer to the solution that way. So stop being so emotional about it and throwing your toys out the pram. It's childish at this rate. We've not got long to save our country. So stop being a child. That's my take on it anyway.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I think that covers that as well. I just wanted to mention that, just share our thoughts on it. I think he's, again, I think he's one of these people who probably is an ethno-nationalist, but, he doesn't, in the sense that, I've got a liberal definition of ethno-nationalist probably compared to most. If you want the native English to remain a majority, a super majority, 90% plus in England, to me, that's ethno-nationalism, because you're recognizing that ethnicity matters and that the native people have to be a majority. I think he agrees with that. So he would meet my definition of an ethno-nationalist. But maybe,
definitely. I do think he's a 90%. I do. I think he'd be happy with a 90%. I believe he's said, tweeted similar things like that in the past, so I do believe he's like that. Obviously, I'm a bit more of a staunch ethno-nationalist, should we say. So like I said, he won't go as far as I would like, but he would go so far that it's enough for then nationalists to have that influence that's so necessary, to create the change that we do need. So I think people just need to stop purity spiraling and expecting people to be perfect or say everything that you want them to say. Because as well, if he went on TV and was like, I'm an ethno-nationalist and I'm proud and I believe in white supremacy and I believe in this, all these internet people would love it. But he'd also turn away a lot of voters, because a lot of voters don't like certain terminology or they don't understand certain terminology. So, why would you do that? I said to you, didn't I, once, Alex, that someone gave me some very good advice, and they say, don't say everything just because you want to if it won't benefit the masses, because then it's selfish. So saying whatever you want just because you want to is actually very selfish if it's going to harm the majority of people. So he is playing smart here. I do believe he doesn't like those terms because of his age, but he also has to be smart. You can't just throw around everything and hope it sticks, because that's not how it works. So I do think people have to be less emotional and just focus, because you're not going to get everything you want. It's impossible. You're not going to get it.
Absolutely. Well, I think that wraps everything up for this evening for the show. I want to thank everyone for watching, and thanks to all our new YouTube viewers as well. That was our first time on YouTube tonight live, so thank you to all of
Yeah.
you.
Absolutely. And whoever's watching now, subscribe to our YouTube. If you're watching through YouTube, subscribe. There's a lot more content going on there shortly. Like Alex said, this is our first live stream. We've only just been able to get on here, but we will be posting regular content. If you're on Twitter, head over to our YouTube. If you're on Facebook, head over to our YouTube. Subscribe, set up notifications, and you'll be notified about all of our live streams. And thank you everyone for this evening. Thank you for listening and taking part. And if you are interested in what we do, if you're interested in All for England, our plans for the country, our plans to reshape thinking of a nation, and our intention to train independent nationalists up and down the country. It doesn't matter what party you're a part of. It doesn't matter what banner you stand under. If you're a nationalist and you want to help this country, then get involved, join All for England and take part in our monthly training webinars and come to our patriotic parties and events. We'd be happy to have you. allforengland.org. Go on, join, sign up for email updates and become part of the All for England family. We want to change this country and we want you to help us do it. So get involved. But one last thing just before we end, England is starting playing now. Obviously, I'm not a fan of the demographic makeup of the team. I'd rather it be all Englishmen. It's funny we won in 66 and there was all Englishmen then. We don't win anymore. Well, I hope we do, but it's funny. The demographic makeup has changed and now we never win anything. But I wish England luck. I hope they win. Bring it home for England. So, yeah, everyone go enjoy the football and enjoy your evening.
Thank you and good night, everybody.
Thanks, guys.